The marketplace was loud, filled with shouts, bargaining, and the smell of fear. Merchants pushed weak slaves forward, chains clinking as buyers examined them like animals. But in the middle of this cruel scene, one figure stood out. An alien mother, thin and trembling, holding the small hand of her child. Her eyes were tired, her clothes torn, but her back remained straight. She had made her choice, a choice heavier than any chain, to sell herself so her child could live. The traders laughed when she stepped onto the wooden stage. "Who will buy this weak one?" A fat alien sneered. "She is too thin, too useless, even for labor." Another jeered. The crowd joined in with cruel laughter. But the mother did not flinch. Her child clung to her leg, wide-eyed with hunger. The little one's stomach growled loudly, and the mother's heart broke. This was why she was here. This was why she stood under the cruel lights of the market. The auctioneer raised his staff. Here she is, a desperate mother, strong enough to give her life for her child. He shouted, his voice full of mockery, "Who will give me credits? Who will take this bargain of misery?" The crowd was silent. No one wanted her. She was too weak, too broken, too desperate. Even the cheapest bid seemed too high for her. The mother lowered her head. For a moment she thought no one would take her. For a moment she wondered if her sacrifice was worthless. Then, from the back of the crowd, a voice spoke, calm and clear. "I will take her." Every head turned. It was not another alien, not a merchant, not a slaver. It was a human. The market froze. Whispers spread quickly. A human? Buying this worthless alien? He must be mad. Humans. Always strange. The human stepped forward, his boots heavy on the dirt floor. He looked nothing like the other buyers. No greed in his eyes, no cruel smile on his lips. His gaze was steady, firm, and unreadable. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. "You want her?" "Yes," the human said simply. "I will pay." The crowd erupted in laughter. "Look at him, wasting money. He must want a servant, or worse. Humans always buy trouble." But the human ignored their words. He walked to the stage, his eyes never leaving the mother. She stared back, her heart pounding. Why? Why would he choose her? She expected to see hunger in his gaze or cruelty, but instead, there was something else, something she had not seen in many seasons, something almost impossible to believe. Kindness. The child hid behind the mother's torn dress. Staring at the tall stranger, fear filled the little one's eyes. Would this human tear them apart? Would he send the child away and keep only the mother? The thought made the mother's chest tighten in dread. The human reached into his pocket and handed credits to the auctioneer. "Done," he said in his calm voice. The auctioneer snatched the money and grinned. A fool's bargain, but a bargain indeed. The chains on the mother's wrists were released. She rubbed her sore skin, still in shock. The human turned and spoke softly. "Come." The mother hesitated. Was this the beginning of a new nightmare? Was she stepping from one prison into another? Her child tugged her hand, trembling with fear. The human looked down at the small one. For a long moment, no one moved. Then he bent down, his voice low, steady, and surprisingly gentle. "You stay together," he said. The child blinked, surprised. The mother's eyes widened. Stay together? Did he mean it? The crowd muttered in disbelief. What is he doing? He doesn't even separate them? This human is insane. The mother's heart raced. Her instincts told her to distrust, but something deep inside whispered a different truth. This was not the gaze of a master looking at his property. This was the gaze of someone who saw her as more than chains. She followed him slowly, holding her child close. The marketplace noise faded behind her. Step by step, her life was changing, though she could not yet see where it would lead. And as the human led them away from the laughter and cruelty, the mother realized something terrifying and strange. This was not the end of her sacrifice. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous hope. The marketplace grew quieter as the human led the mother and her child away. The crowd's laughter still echoed behind them, but the sound faded with each step. The mother walked stiffly, fear and confusion twisting inside her chest. She had sold herself to save her child, yet this stranger had changed everything. Why had he chosen her? Why had he wasted his credits on someone broken and weak? Every other buyer had turned away with disgust, but this man, this human, had raised his hand without hesitation. The mother dared to look at him as they moved through the dirty streets. His face was hard, carved with lines of old battles. His eyes carried shadows, shadows of a soldier who had seen too much. Yet when those eyes turned toward her child, there was a softness that made her breath catch. "Do you have a name?" he asked suddenly, his voice deep but calm. The mother froze. A master asking her name? That was rare, dangerous. Most buyers did not care. To them she was only property still. She whispered quietly, "Lyra." "And the child?" he asked, glancing at the small one clinging to her hand. "Rin," she answered, her voice trembling. The human nodded slowly, as if committing the names to memory. He did not call them slaves, he did not rename them. He simply accepted their truth. They reached a small transport ship at the edge of the market, old but strong, with human markings painted on its side. The child, Rin, looked at the ship with wide eyes, part fear, part curiosity. The human opened the door and motioned for them to enter. Lyra hesitated, her body tense. This could still be a trap. Inside, chains could be waiting, pain could be waiting. But behind her, the market still roared with cruelty. Ahead of her, at least there was silence. She stepped inside, holding her child close. The ship's cabin smelled of metal and old leather, but it was clean, cleaner than any slave barrack she had known. The human followed them in and closed the door. The engines hummed to life, lifting them away from the market. For the first time in many cycles, Lyra felt the weight of the planet below drifting away. Still, her heart would not rest. The human sat across from them, not too close. His eyes studied her carefully. "Why did you do it?" he asked. Lyra stiffened. "Do what?" She whispered. "Sell yourself," he said simply. His words struck deep. She lowered her head, shame burning in her chest. "I had no choice," she murmured. "My child was starving." Rin pressed against her side, small arms clutching her dress. The human's gaze softened again as he looked at the child. He gave a small nod, as if the answer explained everything. Still, he said nothing more. Hours passed in silence as the ship moved through dark space. Lyra expected orders, demands, cruelty, but none came. Instead, the human rose, opened a small storage locker and returned with food, not scraps, not spoiled leftovers. Real food, fresh bread, warm broth, fruit that smelled sweet. He placed it gently before Rin. The child blinked, staring at the food as if it were treasure. "Eat," the human said softly. Rin looked up at his mother, uncertain. Lyra hesitated, her body torn between gratitude and fear. Could this be poisoned? A trick? But the smell was too rich, the hunger too sharp. Her child needed it. She nodded weakly and Rin began to eat. The little one's small hand shook as he devoured the meal, tears filling his eyes. Lyra's own chest tightened as she watched. This was more food than her child had seen in many days, and it came from the hands of the one she feared most. The human leaned back, arms crossed, watching quietly. He did not eat, he did not take. He simply waited until the child's hunger was eased. Lyra felt a strange confusion building in her heart. Was this kindness real? Or was it the beginning of some cruel game? Finally, the human spoke again. "My name is Marcus," he said. The sound of it startled her. Slavers never shared their names. But he gave it freely, as if he wanted her to know him. Lyra's lips parted, but no words came. Her thoughts whirled. Why would a human soldier, strong and free, choose her of all beings? Why care about a starving mother and her child? The fear inside her told her not to trust, but a tiny spark, buried deep in her chest, whispered something dangerous: hope. Outside the ship, stars stretched endlessly. Behind them, the cruel market grew smaller, fading into the darkness. Ahead of them, an unknown future waited. For the first time, Lyra felt chains breaking. Not the metal ones, but the ones inside her soul. She did not know yet if Marcus was a savior or another master, but she knew one thing with certainty. Her life had just changed forever. The hum of the ship was soft. Like a low song in the background, Rin sat pressed against his mother, his small fingers gripping her torn dress as if letting go would mean losing everything. His wide alien eyes stayed locked on the human across the room. Every breath he took was shallow, fast, afraid. Marcus sat still, arms resting on his knees, eyes calm as he watched them. He had fought wars, faced monsters, stared into battlefields filled with fire, but nothing had pierced his heart. Like the sight of this child, so thin, so fragile, trembling not from cold but from pure fear. The silence between them stretched long. Heavy, Lyra held her son close, her hand smoothing his hair. But even her touch could not ease his shaking. To Rin, the human was not a savior, not yet. To him, Marcus was only another buyer, another master waiting to take his mother away. Finally, the child whispered, his small voice cracking, "Will he hurt us?" Lyra froze, her heart breaking at the question. She had no answer. Her own fear told her yes, but something deeper whispered, no. Still, she could not promise what she did not know. Marcus heard the words, though the child's voice was soft. Slowly he shifted, lowering himself down onto one knee so his eyes were level with the boy's. He did not move closer, did not force his presence. Instead, he let the boy see him clearly. His scars, his tired face, his human eyes. "No," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady. "I will not hurt you." The child's small body stiffened, his eyes searching, the human's face for lies, but all he found was a gaze steady and sure. Marcus added, "You stay together, always." Lyra's breath caught. Her son looked up at her as if asking if it could be true. She did not know what to say. Hope was a dangerous thing, but the words sank deep, planting a seed in the boy's frightened heart. Still, fear clung tight to him. When Marcus moved to stand, the child flinched, hiding his face against his mother's side. Marcus stopped, realizing every motion he made was a storm to this boy. So he slowed himself, every gesture calm, controlled, like a soldier disarming a bomb. He treated the boy's fear with care. Hours passed. Rin finally grew tired, his body giving in after too many days of hunger and worry. He lay curled in his mother's arms, his small breaths uneven. Lyra hummed softly, an old song from her people, her voice trembling but gentle. Marcus listened in silence, the melody strange yet beautiful. It spoke of loss, of survival, of love, stronger than hunger. For the first time in years, he felt the walls around his heart shift. When the boy finally slept, Lyra looked at Marcus with guarded eyes. "You say we stay together," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But why? Why by us at all?" Marcus leaned back, his gaze moving to the stars outside the ship's window. "I fought in wars," he said slowly. "I saw families torn apart. I swore, if I had the chance, I would stop it, even once." His words were simple, not loud, but they carried weight. Lyra studied him, her heart torn. Could such a vow be real, or was this another trick of fate? Rin stirred in his sleep, clutching tighter at her dress. The mother bent her head, kissing his hair. Her entire life was for this child. If the human spoke truth, if he really meant to keep them safe, then perhaps, there was a chance, but her doubt still burned. "Kindness," she whispered bitterly. "Kindness does not last, not in this galaxy." Marcus looked back at her then, his eyes sharp, steady. "Then let me prove you wrong," he said. The words struck her, not as an order, not as a threat, but as a promise. A dangerous promise she wanted to believe. The ship drifted through space, carrying them farther from the market. Yet inside the battle was not finished. The battle was inside a child's heart. Rin dreamed uneasy dreams. Shadows chasing him. He feared waking to find his mother gone. Taken, sold again. Even in sleep, his hands never let go. Marcus kept watch through the long hours, his eyes never straying far from them. He had rescued soldiers before, civilians, even children from war zones. But this was different. This was not a mission, not orders from a commander. This was his choice, and that made it heavier than any duty. When morning cycle came, Rin woke to find his mother still there, her arms around him, and the human still seated nearby, awake, silent, waiting. The boy blinked, confused. For the first time, nothing bad had happened in the night. For the first time, he felt a small crack in the wall of his fear. He did not smile yet. He did not speak. But he looked at Marcus longer than before. And in that small, trembling glance, the beginning of trust was born. The ship drifted silently through the endless dark. Stars glimmered outside the small window, but inside the cabin, shadows pressed heavy. Lyra sat with her child in her arms, her back pressed against the wall. Her eyes never left the human. Marcus sat at the far side of the room, quiet, almost still. He did not chain her, did not strike her, did not order her to work, but that made her heart beat even faster, because kindness in this galaxy always came with a price. Rin had fallen asleep, his small hand still clutching her dress, but Lyra could not close her eyes. She remembered every buyer before, every cruel hand, every broken promise, every whispered lie. Was this human truly different? Or was he only waiting until she lowered her guard? The air felt heavy. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she ignored it. Her child had eaten earlier, food the human had given. But what if it was a trick? What if poison hid inside? Her thoughts raced, fear twisting every moment into danger. Marcus finally stood. The sound of his boots made her flinch. He walked to a storage unit, pulled out a blanket, and placed it on the floor near her. "You can use it," he said simply. Then he returned to his seat as if nothing had passed between them. Lyra stared at the blanket, her mind clouded. No master had ever offered her comfort before. She did not trust it. Still, when Rin shivered, in his sleep she wrapped it around him. The fabric was warm, soft, smelling faintly of smoke and metal. Her heart tightened. How could she thank him when she did not even believe him? Time stretched slowly. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Marcus leaned back, his eyes half closed but always alert. He was giving her space, but she knew soldiers never slept easily. Every line of his body spoke of discipline, readiness, control. Lyra's thoughts refused to rest. She remembered the moment he bought her, the laughter of the crowd, the weight of his gaze that felt less like ownership and more like recognition. But recognition of what? Her suffering? Her weakness? Or something else she could not yet see? Hours passed. Her eyes grew heavy, but fear whispered in her mind. If you sleep, he will take your child. Her arms tightened protectively around Rin. Her heart pounded with the thought of waking to find him gone. Marcus's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "You should rest," he said. "I'll keep watch." The words sent a shiver through her, not because they were cruel, but because they were gentle. Gentleness was harder to fight than cruelty. Cruelty, she understood. Gentleness broke her walls. "I cannot sleep," she whispered, her voice raw. Marcus studied her quietly. "I know," he said after a long pause. "You don't trust me, yet." The honesty of his words startled her. Most masters demanded obedience, not trust. But he spoke as if trust mattered. Lyra said nothing. Her heart wanted to ask why, but her lips would not move. Marcus did not push her. He only leaned, back again, eyes steady, as if promising silently that no harm would come. The night stretched on, filled with silence and the faint breaths of her child. Slowly, her body betrayed her. Her eyes closed, her head heavy. Sleep pulled at her, even as fear tried to resist. Her last sight before slipping into dreams was Marcus, still awake, still watching like a silent guardian. Her dreams were not kind. She saw chains, cages, and cruel faces from the past. She saw Rin torn from her arms screaming, and in the dream she reached for him but could not hold on. Her cries echoed in the dark of her own mind. She woke with a sharp gasp, her arms clutching at Rin, but he was still there. Still asleep in her lap, the ship was quiet, the shadows unchanged, and Marcus was still sitting in the same place, his eyes calm, his presence unshaken. For a moment, relief washed over her like water. He had not moved, had not touched them. The fear inside her shifted, not gone, but weaker. Like a chain loosening link by link, Marcus spoke softly, not looking away from the stars outside. Nightmares? Lyra's breath caught. She had not wanted him to see her weakness, but his tone carried no judgment, no mockery, only understanding. Yes, she whispered. Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening slightly. I know the kind, he said. War leaves them. Hunger leaves them. Loss leaves them. His words carried the weight of someone who had lived through all three. For the first time, Lyra felt a strange connection. Small, fragile, but real. The rest of the night passed in uneasy silence. But something had shifted. She still feared him, still doubted his intentions, but she could no longer deny what she had seen. A man who had stayed awake watching, not to control but to guard. When morning cycle came, the light of the stars was softer. Rin stirred, yawning, stretching his small arms. He blinked, then looked at Marcus. For the first time, he did not hide immediately. It was only a second, a fleeting glance, but Marcus caught it. A crack in the wall of fear, small but important. Lyra held her son close, her mind torn between disbelief and a dangerous thought. Perhaps this human was not like the others. Perhaps he truly meant his words, but doubt still lingered. Hope was fragile. And she had learned long ago that fragile things could shatter too easily. The ship glided through the stars, carrying its 3 passengers away from the cruel market. Days passed in silence, broken only by the hum of engines and the soft breaths of a child. Marcus gave food, water, and space, but he asked for nothing in return. Still, the air between them was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. Lyra often sat in the corner, holding Rin close, her eyes watching every move Marcus made. She wanted to believe his kindness, yet her heart carried too many scars. Every smile, every soft word, every promise in the past had turned to betrayal. So why would this human be any different? One evening, when the stars outside burned red with a dying sun, Marcus spoke first. You're not from the market world, he said, his voice low but certain. No one sells themselves unless they're desperate. Lyra stiffened, her hand tightening protectively around Rin. Her instinct screamed to stay silent, to hide her story. But his steady eyes pulled the truth from her. I was from a small tribe, she whispered, her voice brittle. We lived in the mountains, far from the cities. Her gaze turned distant, lost in memory. We had little, but we had each other. Until the famine came. Rin stirred in her arms, half asleep, his small head pressing against her chest. Lyra's hand stroked his hair, though her eyes grew darker. Our people grew hungry, desperate. Some traded honor for survival, she continued. Her jaw tightened, anger mixing with grief. My own kin sold me to slavers when I refused to give up my child. Marcus did not interrupt. He sat still, listening, his face unreadable. Lyra's voice shook, but she forced herself to go on. They said I was weak, a burden. They took everything, my family, my freedom, my place among them. All gone. Her eyes burned, not with tears, but with a deep fire of betrayal. All I had left was Rin. He was all I had left. Silence filled the cabin, heavy as stone. Marcus finally spoke, his tone calm, but edged with steel. They betrayed you. Lyra looked at him sharply, almost surprised. Most others would have mocked her, or told her it was fate. But Marcus said the words like a soldier naming an enemy, clear and without doubt. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. They betrayed me and I betrayed myself. I stepped onto that stage. I chose to sell my own freedom. For him, Her arms tightened around her child as if afraid someone would take him even now. Marcus's eyes softened slightly. Not betrayal, he said. Sacrifice. The word cut deep, changing the shape of her shame. She stared at him, confused, but in his eyes she saw no mockery, only respect, the kind of respect given to warriors, not slaves. For the first time, she looked at him not with fear, but with curiosity. Why do you care? She asked. Why listen to the story of a broken mother? Marcus leaned back, his gaze turning to the window, to the endless stretch of stars. Because I know what it means to lose everything, he said quietly. I fought in the Terran Wars. Whole colonies burned, families torn apart. I watched comrades fall one by one until I was the only one left. His voice grew rough but steady. I promised myself I would never look away again, not if I could help it, not if I could save even one life from being broken. Lyra's breath caught. She had expected cruelty, commands, chains, but not this. A human who carried wounds just as deep as hers. For a long moment, they sat in silence, two broken souls facing the weight of their pasts. Rin stirred again, waking this time, his small eyes blinking open. He looked from his mother to Marcus, sensing the heaviness in the air. Mother, he whispered. Why are you sad? Lyra kissed his head softly, forcing a small smile. I am not sad, little one. I am remembering. Marcus watched the scene quietly, his hands resting loosely on his knees. The boy's innocence struck him harder than any battlefield ever had. Here was the reason the mother endured chains, hunger, and betrayal. Here was the reason she stood tall even when broken love. The night grew darker, the stars colder, but inside the ship something shifted. Lyra no longer looked at Marcus as just another master. She still feared him, still doubted, but in her heart, a crack had opened, a place where trust might one day grow. Marcus felt it too, though he did not speak it. He only nodded once, silently promising himself he would not fail them. Not this time, not this family. And as the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, the shadows of the past lingered, but for the first time Lyra did not feel crushed beneath them. For the first time she felt she was not carrying them alone. The ship had become quiet, almost peaceful. For the first time in many cycles, Lyra felt a faint sense of safety. Rin slept more soundly, his small breath steady, his face no longer twisted with fear. Marcus kept his word. He gave them food, shelter, and protection, and he asked for nothing in return. But peace never lasted in the galaxy, and shadows were always chasing. It began with a warning light flashing on the control panel. Marcus frowned, leaning forward in his seat. The signal was clear. Another ship was trailing them, closing in, fast. He muttered under his breath, his jaw tightening. They found us, Lyra stiffened, her instinct screaming danger. Who? She asked, clutching Rin close. Marcus's voice was low, calm, but sharp. Slavers, mercenaries. They don't like losing what they think belongs to them. Her blood ran cold. Of course they would come. No one walked away from the market without chains following. Her heart pounded as she held her child. She had thought she had escaped, but the galaxy was not so kind. The enemy ship appeared outside, dark and heavy, like a predator circling prey. A voice crackled through the comms, harsh and mocking. Human, you have something that belongs to us. Hand over the alien mother and maybe we'll let you live. Lyra's stomach twisted with fear. Her body trembled, ready to be taken again. But Marcus stood slowly, his shoulders steady, his eyes like stone. She's not yours, he said into the comm. The mercenary laughed, the sound cruel. Then you die with her. The enemy ship fired first, a blast shaking the cabin. Rin cried out, burying his face against Lyra's chest. She wrapped her arms around him, shielding him with her body. Her heart screamed in terror. But when she looked up, Marcus was already moving. He pressed controls with speed, his hands steady, guiding the ship into sharp turns. Blasts streaked past them, lighting the darkness of space. He moved like a man who had done this many times before, not panicked, not afraid, but precise, deadly. Lyra watched with wide eyes. For the first time, she saw more than kindness in the human. She saw the soldier hidden beneath. Every motion, every choice spoke of training carved by fire and war. He was not just a man, he was a weapon. The mercenaries tried to board, hooking onto the small ship with clamps. The hull groaned. As metal hit metal, Lyra's breath caught, her arms tightening around Rin. "They're coming," she whispered in terror. Marcus's voice was calm, but his eyes burned. "Stay here. Protect the boy. I'll handle them." Before she could answer, he was gone, moving toward the airlock. The sound of boots echoed through the ship as mercenaries forced their way inside. They came armed, faces twisted with greed, chains ready in their hands. "Give us the mother," one snarled. But instead of a helpless human traitor, they found Marcus waiting. The battle was swift and brutal. Marcus moved like lightning, his fists striking, his blade flashing, his body a storm of discipline. Every strike was precise, every motion trained from years of survival. The mercenaries fell one by one, their weapons clattering against the metal floor. Lyra could hear the sounds from the cabin, the clash, the grunts, the silence that followed. Her heart pounded, fear and awe mixing together. She rocked her child gently, whispering, "Stay strong, Rin. Stay strong." But her eyes kept darting to the door. Would Marcus return, or would the mercenaries take him too? Minutes felt like hours. Then the door opened and Marcus stepped back inside. His shirt was torn, blood stained his arm, but his eyes were steady. "It's done," he said simply. Lyra's breath caught. "You fought them, for us," she whispered. Marcus shrugged as if it meant little. "They gave me no choice." But his eyes betrayed the truth. He had chosen, and he would choose again. Rin peeked out from his mother's arms, his small eyes wide. He stared at Marcus with awe, no longer just fear. The boy whispered softly, "Protector." The word was small, but it struck like thunder. Marcus froze, his jaw tightening. Protector, not master, not owner. Protector. Lyra looked at her son, then at Marcus, her chest heavy with emotions she could not name. Fear, yes, but something more. Gratitude, confusion, and the first flicker of trust. Her voice trembled. "You risked your life for us, why?" Marcus cleaned the blood from his arm with a cloth, his eyes distant. "Because no one else would," he said quietly. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of an oath he had already begun to keep. Silence fell again, but it was different this time. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of something new being born. Lyra held her child close, her eyes never leaving the human. She still doubted, still feared, but the walls inside her heart were weakening. The chains of her past no longer felt unbreakable. Outside, the wreck of the mercenary ship drifted in, silence. The stars burned cold, but inside Marcus's ship, warmth began to grow. A fragile bond, tested by fire, forged in battle, and for the first time, Lyra wondered if hope was not a weakness, but a weapon of its own. The wreck of the mercenary ship drifted silently in the void. Inside Marcus's vessel, the air was heavy with smoke, blood, and silence. Lyra sat with Rin pressed against her chest, still trembling from the attack, but her eyes were fixed on the human who had fought like a storm to protect them. Marcus sat across the room, binding the wound on his arm with rough cloth. His face was calm, but his hands carried the quiet ache of pain. He had killed for them, risked his life for them, yet he asked for nothing in return. Rin peeked up from his mother's arms, his small voice breaking the silence. "Protector," he whispered again, this time stronger. Marcus looked at him, and for a moment his hard eyes softened. It was not the word itself, but the trust hidden inside it. Trust from a child who had known only fear. Lyra felt her heart twist. Her whole life had been chains. Chains of hunger, betrayal, slavery. But now a human she barely knew had shattered those chains with his bare hands. She wanted to believe, but doubt still clung to her like a shadow. "You could have left us," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "You could have handed me over and walked away free." Marcus's jaw tightened, his gaze meeting hers. "I don't leave people to chains," he said simply. The words struck deep. To him it was not a grand speech, not a promise, it was just truth, spoken like stone. Rin stirred. Climbing down from his mother's lap, he walked cautiously to Marcus, his small hands shaking. Marcus remained still, letting the boy decide. Finally, Rin touched his uninjured hand. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice fragile but real. Marcus blinked, almost startled, then nodded once. "You're safe now," he said softly. Lyra's breath caught at the sight. Her son, who had known only fear, was reaching out, and the human was not pulling away. Something inside her chest cracked wide open, but even in this fragile moment the past whispered, "You are still a slave," her mind warned. "You are still owned. He bought you." Her hands clenched, her voice sharp with fear. "What now, human?" she demanded. "You bought me. What do you want from me? What do you want from us?" Marcus's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with quiet pain. He rose slowly, towering, over her but not threatening. "I don't want a slave," he said firmly. "I don't want chains in my home. I want a family." Lyra froze, her heart thundering in her chest. Family. The word was too heavy, too dangerous. She had lost one, betrayed by those who should have protected her, and now this man, this human, offered her another. Her voice shook, broken by disbelief. "You would take in an alien? A mother with nothing? A child not your own?" Marcus stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "I already have," he said, his voice steady. "You are not my slave. You are free. If you stay, it will be because you choose to." The words stunned her. Freedom. She had dreamed of it, prayed for it, sold herself for her child's survival, and now it was in her hands, offered by the very man who held every right to chain her. Her knees weakened, her heart a storm of fear, disbelief, and something far more dangerous. Hope. Rin looked up at her, his eyes wide and innocent. "Mother," he whispered. "Can we stay?" The child's question pierced deeper than any chain ever had. He wanted this human, this protector, to be more than a stranger. Lyra closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. For so long she had carried the weight of survival alone. For so long she had been nothing but a slave, a mother, a shadow. But now she felt the impossible, a chance to be more. She looked at Marcus, her voice trembling. "You give us freedom. But I choose." Her words broke, but she forced them out. "I choose to stay." Marcus's hard face softened, just slightly. He gave a single nod, not smiling, not gloating, only accepting, as if her choice mattered more than any victory. And in that moment something unspoken passed between them. Not chains, not ownership, but the beginning of love. The ship sailed on. Leaving wreckage and chains behind, Lyra held her son close, but her eyes no longer burned with fear. Rin leaned against her, safe in a way he had never known before. And Marcus stood watch, silent but steady, a guardian forged from war and pain. The galaxy was still cruel, still dangerous. But now inside this small ship something new lived. Not slavery, not despair, but family. And in the endless dark of space, that single truth shone brighter than any star.